Okay, go ahead. You're up next.
Yeah, I got a question for John from Bulldog Mindset. Just curious, John, what advice do you have for someone who's looking to build a real estate empire?
To build a real estate empire. Okay. Well, you give me a little bit more about it. So it really what we got to look at is what is your plan? Like, what do you want as an outcome from it, right? Because there's a lot of different things that you could do with a real estate empire, right? Do you want to have just as much net worth as possible? Do you want to have cash flow so you can retire?
Yeah, as much net worth as possible. So I looked at your last post on Instagram.
Mhm.
You said invest in yourself, get an office job, and then, diversify your investments. To give you a little context, I'm working in an office right now. Last year, I just made 6 figures. So now this year, I'm focusing on getting enough funds for a down payment and then building the real estate empire.
Okay. So there's this little concept I have in real estate. I call it the leverage cash flow knob. Okay. So imagine like a knob, right? And you can turn this knob all the way over to the left, let's say, and we're going to leverage land. Okay. When we go into leverage land, what happens is we increase our risks, definitely. But what we're doing is we're reducing the cash flow that we make from the property, but we're increasing the overall profit that we can make from the property. Okay. We're increasing our return at the cost of cash flow in the immediate, and possibly at the cost of having negative cash flow, which is kind of dangerous. So we could turn that knob all the way and we can get into danger zone, okay? We can turn the knob all the way to the cash flow side, and what happens is that we reduce our leverage in the property, thus reducing our profitability, but we get money in our pocket right now, right? So I'll give you an example. It's just a simple example here. Let's say you could buy a house for $100,000, okay? Now, you could buy that house and you could buy it $100,000 cash, right? If you had 100,000 cash, you could say, here you go. I don't need a loan, 100 grand, slide the suitcase over, right? All right. So that's turning the knob all the way to the cash flow side. Okay. Now, when you do it like that, let's say that, I don't know, let's say that you've got some taxes and insurance and stuff, but let's just make it simple. And let's say you get $1,000 a month rent. Let's say it's a 10% cap rate, right? That just means you get a 10% return on the value of the property, essentially, right? I'm simplifying things, but for everyone here. But okay, so let's say you get $1,000 a month. Okay, so the knob is turned all the way to cash flow. So what happens? You get $1,000 in a month in your pocket every month. Okay, and then let's say that the value of that property goes up 3%. Okay, so what's your return on your investment of your $100,000 after 1 year? Let's say it goes up 3%.
3% plus the 10%.
It'll be 3% plus the 12 grand that you made on the, so maybe like 4 or whatever percent, something around there. But let's say 3% on just the appreciation side. Okay, plus, so 3% appreciation, 12 grand in your pocket. Okay, side, you got taxes, insurance, some of that, we're just going to ignore that for now. Okay, now let's say that we want to crank it over to the leverage side, right? And let's say that you take that same $100,000 property, and instead of paying $100,000 cash for it, you go to the bank, before the whole COVID-19 thing, and they tightened up everything. And you say, yeah, I want to do that 10% down loan, and I'm going to get a second mortgage on the property, right? But it's such a good deal, this property that you got, that let's say that you get 10% down on the property, okay? And you're still getting rent, $1,000 a month, but that just pays for the mortgage. You got really low interest rates. Let's say you're break even on it. Maybe you're slightly in the negative, 50, $100, whatever. But you're basically, to make things simple, we'll say you're break even. Okay. So now you've got just $10,000 into it. Okay. Still worth $100,000. It goes up 3% in value. What is your return on your investment?
The 12,000 plus the amount that you're getting for the rent if you're renting it out.
So the rent is a wash. It's zero. You rent and your mortgage payment, they cancel each other out. So the property value just goes up 3%.
So you're getting the 12,000.
You sell that property it was 100 and now it's worth 103, right? So you sell that property for $3,000, or you get for a profit of $3,000, but it's $3,000 profit on a $10,000 investment. So it's a 10x lever. So your return on your money is 30%. Okay. instead of 3%. If you're all in cash, you turn the knob all the way to cash flow, you get cash flow in your pocket, but you only get 3% return on your money, right, in this scenario. If you turn it all the way over to leverage, pretty much as far as you can go, you get a 30% return on your investment of 10 grand, but you get no money in your pocket. In fact, maybe it's an alligator that's taking a little bit of money out of your pocket in the immediate term, okay? Now, this is a real simplified view, but it's just to understand the concept of if you want to build net worth, you want to crank that lever closer to the leverage side. Probably not so far, probably not that far, because the other thing is when you switch it to leverage, okay, you put yourself in a position where if something goes wrong, you don't have cash flow to cover it. Now, if you're in a 30-year fixed loan, right, which is what I always recommend. I went through the 2008 bubble. Believe me, I had all my properties. I made money in 2008 after that happened because I had 30-year fixed mortgages. But what I'm saying is that if you want to build net worth, you need leverage, okay? And everyone's scared and they're like, oh, leverage is bad. But let me tell you, I'll tell you a story, because every time I say this, people are like, oh, no, you're giving bad advice, John. You're going to get people killed in real estate. But let me tell you, okay, so in 2008, 2007, whatever the peak of the market was, right before the crash, I bought a fourplex for $425,000, okay, and I put 20% down on that property, okay? Now, I got a 30-year fixed loan on the property, okay? So I had my rents and I had my mortgage, okay? And I had taxes, insurance, expenses. So my rents covered the mortgage payment and the tax insurance. So I basically broke even, $0 in my pocket on that property. Maybe a little bit. I made like maybe $100 or $200 a month on that property, okay? 2008 hits and the value of the property gets cut in half. Literally the unit next to me got in a short sale and they sold it for $200,000 or $225,000. So literally my value went from $425,000 to basically $200,000, maybe $225,000. It got cut in half. Okay, but it didn't matter to me. Why? Because even though I'm leveraged, I'm smart because I have a 30-year loan and I'm in it for the long haul because I want net worth. That's what I'm after. Okay, long-term net worth. I'm not speculating. I'm investing. So what happened was nothing. Nothing happened to me. On paper, my value was gone, but my rents were still the same. My mortgage payment doesn't change because it's a 30-year fixed loan. And then what ended up happening was actually my rents went up because no one could buy houses, so rents went up. So it's actually in a better position after 2008 while everyone else was scrambling and losing their asses. And then a couple of years later, mortgage rates dropped down and I refinanced. And so now I had money in my pocket. I had good cash flow in there. And, people say, oh, you're fortunate you didn't have your renters or you didn't lose your renters, which is negligible in the long run. So again, you could lose renters when there's an economy that crashes. But in that case, most of the time and you can look at this statistically throughout time, when economies crash and there's recessions, rents go up. They don't go down. They go up. And the reason why is because people can't afford to buy houses, because what tightens up more than paychecks is banks. Banks don't want to lend money. So anyway, what ended up happening is now that property is worth, like $650,000. So I've got the net worth growth there, but I was able to hold on to the property without the risk. Now, it's bad when things like that happen, but the reason why I'm telling you all of this is because I don't want to just give you some advice and say leverage, because that would be bad, because there's a lot of ways you can leverage, and there's a lot of people that leverage and they lost their asses when the market tanked because they didn't have 30-year fixed loans, because they had short-term speculative properties that were not good investments to start with. And what ended up happening was, ARMs basically, pay option ARM was the popular thing at that time, which was where you basically only paid the interest on the loan. And so that actually could turn on you when the interest rates went up, or things happened bad, right? At my worst case, I might be out like a couple $100 if one of the units was vacant. Okay, but anyway, what I'm saying, this whole thing, if you want to build a real estate empire, what you want to do is you want to buy properties consistently with a good amount of leverage, not too much. I would put 20%, maybe 25% down. It depends on the market. It depends on the deal. You want to buy things under market as much as possible, because that bakes in some security into something that is somewhat risky. And you always want to be at least slightly cash flow positive on the deal so that you can handle anything. And you want to do all the calculations, right? So you say, all right, what is the mortgage payment going to be? What are taxes? What are insurance? What is the association fee if there is? What is the maintenance on the property? And then you budget for capital expenses, right? So you got to replace a roof someday. You budget all that stuff in and you run the numbers meticulously, And then you find out, okay, am I secure in this deal so that it's a good investment? If it is, then you pull the trigger, and you just keep on repeating that process over time. And what's going to happen is, while you're leveraged like that, okay, you're going to get that growth, that leverage growth, but you're not going to be taking on the risk, because you're going to be doing 30-year fix and doing your math. Okay. Other people that get in trouble with leverage, they don't do the math. Okay. If you do that and you're patient, if you're willing to do this as a 20-year play, all right, you will become wealthy from doing that. If you're willing to invest for 20 years, right? You don't want to invest for, like, people that try to make money in real estate in 5 years. Those are the people that they get fucked by the market turning on them. Flipping stuff, that's no good. Okay. Instead, you're investing for the long haul, and you're using that leverage. And at any time, see, this is the beauty about net worth. You can always convert net worth into cash flow at any time, right? So if you have a huge net worth, let's say your net worth becomes $10 million. At some point, you can just take that $10 million, you can take that net worth out of whatever you have it, and you can now be unleveraged. Now you could buy $10 million worth of real estate unleveraged, and you can just get the cash flow, and you can retire, right? So early in your investing career, leverage, okay? And that's when you can afford to take the risk, because you don't even have much to lose at that point. Later on, as you start to increase that net worth, okay, then you want to have more cash flow. Then you're turning the knob here, right? So for example, when I retired, quote, retired like 7 years ago, I turned the knob all the way here. I was a little bit too conservative with it, but I paid off all my properties. And so I had, I've got about $4 million worth of properties that's all paid off cash. And I get a lot of cash flow. I make like 15, 20K a month in cash flow from the properties. I don't really need to do that. I probably should go back a little bit more on the leverage side, but I didn't really understand that concept fully at that point. Does that make sense? That's how you build up an empire, is you got to use leverage.
Yeah, it does. So you recommend focusing on cash flow, not on house flipping, and looking at long-term leverage. That, just to kind of put everything in perspective. That would be your recommendation, the long-term leverage approach.
Yeah. Long-term leverage approach. That's the way to get capital appreciation over time in real estate. If you don't do it that way, and you can do other things inside of the realm of real estate. You can buy properties under market, and you can do fixer-uppers and stuff like that. But I don't even talk about that, because that's not investing. That's running a fixer-upper business. And if you just happen to hold on to the properties that you fix up, those are two different business entities, two business activities, right? And people get confused. They say, I'm doing real estate investing, and they're flipping houses, or they're buying fixer-uppers and fixing them up. I'm like, no, you're running two businesses. One business is a wholesale operation, but then you're wholesaling to yourself, okay? And then you're an investor. But those are two different things. So that's why I always talk about the investing side, because if you want to do other stuff, wherever you can make the most money, make the most money. If you really want to build a real estate empire, if that's your job, if it's flipping houses, then fine. If you want to do that to make money, whatever it is where you can, business is probably the best way, honestly. That's how you really get rich, is you make a lot of money in business, and then you store it in real estate. But
what would you factor in your do you depend on real estate for cash flow, or is it just like, is it you supplement money or food money, or where would you allocate that in regard to your personal finances?
Yeah, good question. So I have a concept that I call the well that never runs dry. It's somewhat of a conservative concept, but I think every single multimillionaire that I know of that's successful does some variation of this. They just don't call it that. I have a name for it. I call it, like I said, the well that never runs dry. It's basically this.